everyone, and welcome to another episode of Two Docs and a Grunt. Unfortunately, it seems like tonight we are having quite a bit of technical difficulty. So we do apologize for coming on a little bit later than usual, and we apologize that our partner Nate seems to have fallen off the feed, but I'm sure he'll come back in. But let's get
Yeah.
this show on the road. As usual, I am Dr. Luis Fonseca, U.S. Navy Hospital Corpsman, retired after 22 years of active duty service. During my time in the Navy, I was part of Operation Iraqi Freedom's first push into Iraq, and I was involved in the Battle of Al Nasiriyah. For my actions on that day, I was awarded the Navy Cross. Today, we get to welcome back a prior guest of ours, Mr. Frank Rando, who is a former U.S. Army nuclear, biological, and chemical specialist and Special Forces medical sergeant and intelligence sergeant with deployments across the Middle East, Africa, Central and Latin America, and Europe. Following his military service, Frank continued his work at the Defense Intelligence Agency, Armed Forces Medical Intelligence Center, where he served as a medical intelligence analyst and force health protection subject matter expert. There, he focused on tracking global diseases, threats, environmental hazards, and emerging risks to deployed forces, playing a critical role in protecting service members throughout epidemiological surveillance and intelligence integration. Those are some big fancy Ivy League words. In his
Yeah.
civilian career, Frank is a physician assistant and surgical first assistant, while also practicing in
Oh,
cardiopulmonary medicine and serving as a medical
there
examiner
you
for the Department of Veterans Affairs. His background also includes work as a respiratory therapist, paramedic, hazardous materials technician, and hyperbaric medical specialist, bringing a truly multidisciplinary perspective to healthcare and emergency response. Frank is also a nationally recognized educator and instructor, teaching tactical and disaster medicine courses across multiple platforms, including FEMA and the National Association of Emergency Medical Technicians. He's published over 80 articles and continues to contribute to national security, emergency preparedness, and veteran health, particularly as a leading advocate and subject matter expert on military toxic exposures and their long-term effects. And with that, I will now pass
Thank
the mic
you,
over to our partner Nate.
Mr. Nate. Hello, sir.
Or maybe not. Let's go ahead and go, Doc Barry. Introduce yourself and see if
All
Nate's
right.
feed catches up with us.
My name's Andrew Barry, also known as Doc Barry. I am a psychologist and psychoanalyst, and I specialize in working with veterans and first responders battling post-traumatic stress and related mental health issues. Um, Frank Rando is coming on with us for the second time in the space of a month. I was originally introduced to Frank by a retired fire chief and fellow respiratory therapist, and he has been a blast and a half to exchange messages with and jaw jag with. Um, Frank understands the humanistic aspect of what we are talking about, and the publications that he has out there are understandable. They are not, at least what I've read so far, a morass of pie charts and stats and numbers. They're very humanistically uh, written, which really opens up a lot more discussions and a deeper understanding of the inhuman yet all too human monster we know of as post traumatic stress. Amen to that. Welcome back, Frank. Nate,
Thank you
are you
so very
there?
much, Doc, and I appreciate Doc Luis, your introduction as the last time we were guests. Um, I'm very humbled to be here as always, and I find that this venue um, is probably one of the better venues that I've ever shared or been on, I should say, and participated in for veterans, mental health issues and other health issues. I am not a psychiatrist, obviously. I'm not a psychologist like Doc, but I have a personal understanding as well as a more of a physiological understanding of what happens during PTSD and what we call, more recently, we call moral injury and what goes on in the brain. And I'm kind of like a neuroscience nerd. And so I try to relate that to what actually manifests as behaviors, and we need to get also, and we're trying to do a better job on getting to the fundamental nature of what's really going on in the human brain that has been affected by traumatic experiences. And I'm not just talking about vets, I'm talking about firefighters, I am talking about EMS personnel, of which I was once of, and law enforcement. And I was involved as a SWAT tactical medic at one time. And we've all seen a lot of horrific things that have left permanent impressions on our minds. So, and first responders also, have their own battlefields, right? It's not just warriors, military warriors, but it is our emergency services, first response community that have their own battlefields. Let's look at what's really going on right now in California with that tank that's about to blow, okay, or leak out, or and caused over a 50,000 person evacuation. I mean, that alone. I mean, firefighters actually went near that thing to do what they call a recon in order to reconnoiter what's really going on in real time to that tank in order to make further planning decisions and operational decisions based on what they see. And if that is not bravery, what is? If that doesn't have a traumatic effect on your psyche, knowing that thousands of people depend on your decision making and what you relay up to your commanders, like your incident commander and all that, and decisions are made upon that, everything that they see in real time, and that they measure. I mean, that's a big burden onto itself. And and I know, having been in what they call critical incident situations, like SWAT type situations, that and also not only that, but just responding to like a mass casualty event on a civilian side, let alone, of course, the military side, but on a civilian side, what people do in the first response community, I wanted to expand a little bit more, is to me almost equivalent as a battlefield, except it's a different battlefield for those first responders. And they come away with similar scars, especially when we're dealing with children.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you brought up this I call it this new magical word, and it's only because I did a paper on it, but this moral
yeah,
injury, right? Moral
actually,
injury.
yeah, actually, and Doc, I'm very impressed with what you have done with that.
Oh, thank you. You actually read it? Yeah.
Extremely impressed. And the thing is that what you put forth is, you pointed out some of the discrepancies and disparities and things like that, that happen, let's say, with our, VAs and whatnot. And I think it was an excellent topic, and
You,
it was
brother.
well done.
Thank you, brother. I
Well done.
appreciate that. But you're
You
absolutely
just
right.
you deserve that degree, man.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I apprate that.
For
But
sure.
talking about the whole moral
You weren't looking at your cell phone all the time in class.
That's right. Talk about moral injury, and that's one thing that I found within my research, even though mine specifically talks about veterans and mainly the post 9/11 veterans, just because it's my era, I'm saying it's and but you could in my research I saw how moral injury, just like PTSD, right? It's not just related to those that serve in the military or those that serve even as first responders, right? Police officers, law enforcement, firefighters, right? But it
Yeah.
extends even to our healthcare providers, our teachers, right? You know,
Right.
w- uh, anything that can go against what you think is morally or ethically correct or right or wrong, for whatever reason, whether it was your upbringing, your religious beliefs or values, right? Those things. And um and and you're right, those wounds. Doc Barry always likes to talk about the first wound is always the deepest, right? But I do think moral injury definitely cuts a lot deeper than PTSD does, right?
Right.
And I think the big uh, factor that makes both of them different is the fact that a lot of times PTSD is a singular event, right? We're involved in a horrific car accident. Maybe
Yes.
someone passes away. We get it from that. We're involved in a combat situation. We get PTSD from that. A firefighter might lose, like you said, Frank, a child, right? Going into a building and now has the post traumatic stress disorder. But
Absolutely.
but when you're
Absolutely.
talking about moral injury and you're talking about shame, guilt, all those things that can go, and I've kind of been taking a little break since school, so I don't remember
Right.
all of them.
Right.
But yeah, those things last
Mhm.
for forever, for a long time until they're
Indeed, it
properly
does.
addressed.
And,
And
and and the other thing too, when we're looking at our truly amazing and brave police officers. Now, having said that, rotten apples come in every group, right?
mhm,
But the majority of cops out there care about their community. They serve with bravery and sometimes without trepidation. They run in just like everybody else runs in. When other people are running away, they're running in just like our fire guys and our EMS guys. So, having said that, split second decision making in a
mhm,
tactical situation can lead to tragedy, as we all know.
right.
Doesn't mean that the cop was bad. It means that the cop is human
Yeah.
and has made an error, which requires which a computer wouldn't be able to calculate as faster than the human brain. I mean, I'm just saying that they make decisions every day that are life and death.
Mhm,
And so how they react during that situation sometimes is put at tremendous scrutiny and put in a group of people that are not human. They're dehumanized something horribly.
mhm,
Our
mhm.
police, our law enforcement in general, federal, state, local.
Yeah.
They're made into second-class citizens, and they're hit with criticism left and right. Right? I mean, whichever side you're on of the aisle, look what's happened to our ICE agents, man. And okay, sometimes it's a poor decision. Sometimes it's a split second decision. You only have a split second to make a decision whether you're going to go home dead or alive. I mean that, and also, again, I'm going to parallel that to the military warrior out there. We're dealing with our society is dealing with some of the most unprecedented acts of violence that you have ever seen in your lifetime, aside from the war thing. But from civilian perspective, what's going on in our broken society and how divided we are and how we demonize our public safety personnel. Firefighters get hugged and kissed. Cops not so much. Okay? Doc.
As far as cops going through moral injury, I have had the privilege and continue to have the privilege of working with two officers who were involved in situations, and I can't give away too much information. I'm trying to
Right. Of course.
de-identify this, just general, in which a suspect uh, was killed. Okay,
Yeah.
so the moral injury of being put in the position of having to deploy the weapon for his own safety and the safety of those around him.
Of course.
And there's more. There's more. I wish there wasn't, but there's more. So we have that part of the puzzle. And then we have, to add insult to agony, then we have the inevitable internal affairs or officer shooting investigation that takes place afterward, where that officer or those officers are second guessed, are grilled because of what you were just saying, Frank, that split second decision.
Yes, sir.
So not only are their motives questioned by people they serve with, their bosses. Now, the next thing that happens is there is often, while they are waiting for that to work its way through the legal process, the officer involved in these incidences is treated like a pariah by his own people, which is to say, when he needs to be surrounded by his fellow officers the most, to reach out to him and say, how you feeling, how you doing? Okay. In the case of both of these individuals, such contact during that period of uncertainty was minimized. And it turns out there were internal memos and emails circulated around. Don't reach out to him until this is resolved, because your conversations could wind up being subpoenaed. You could wind up having to do time in the witness stand, which is a terrible experience to go through. So now we have here, gentlemen, the original shooting or whatever it is that takes place, the investigation that takes place, the stunning, if you will. He's a hot potato. We're not going to talk to him until everything else is resolved. And then at the end of that, there's more. That's when, after everything is resolved, that's when his fellow officers and his bosses reach out. Hey, how you feeling? How you doing? After ignoring him for upwards of months. And yes, I'm getting
Yeah.
worked up.
And during that
And
period, he's totally ostracized.
Yes. And there's one more layer of icing on this disgusting cake.
Or she.
Correct. After the criminal stuff is resolved, then there is the civil lawsuit leveled against
Oh
him,
yeah.
which drags him through court again
Oh
for
yeah.
months. Can you say moral injury with many layers to it? I knew you could. Sorry to
Oh
jump in
yeah.
with that, but I'm seeing this with my own eyes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I believe there's the parallel with the military warrior right there on the civilian side. And I wanted to bring that up because I have a great respect and a great, not only that, but an internal perspective on how law enforcement, is different than the other emergency services because of the fact of what they have to do, the power that they are given, and the fact that they are taken away, kind of like removed from the human race and made into like some type of automaton, that has to react. And it's not like that at all. Cops have hearts. I mean, good hearts. They have good emotions towards others. They have an unswerving devotion to community and nation. They have a sense of being a sheepdog. Just like the military are sheepdogs, cops are sheepdogs. And the sheepdog, like while everybody else is doing stuff that, going through their normal lives and doing all of that, the sheepdog waits for the wolf. And they constantly have that on their mind. When they're on duty, they have to look for that wolf, which could come out of anywhere at any time and cause mass murder, mass casualties, and things like that. And the cops have to go in and try to mitigate that situation at very, very, very high risk, in a high risk environment, and also be able to later after the event is done, dust off their clothes and go back on patrol. And maybe deal with some other knucklehead that's going to cause some issues.
Yeah.
With
Okay.
no processing and no debrief.
No process and no debriefing immediately after. I mean, there are debriefing critical incidents. We used to call them critical incident stress debriefings, CISDs. Okay, now it's CISM, critical incident stress management, or if you will, on the military side, AAR, after action report. Okay, so if you want to look at that, and I've seen it, cops do break down and cry. They are not walls made out of brick stone. They are human beings. They have a psyche. They have emotions. They express love. They express all types of emotions. However, they are so misinterpreted, and that goes on all levels of law enforcement. But I especially want to bring out the beat cops and deputies out there that do their work in their communities every day. They have so many encounters, and so many different things. And one of the highest rates of suicide in our country is among police officers. One of the highest rates of alcoholism and divorces are among our police officers. So that tells you a lot what kind of, I don't want to say that they're any less than firefighters. They're just a different breed.
It's a different job scope, right? That has its own unique, different responsibility.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And one scenario that's been playing in my head as you and Doc Barry have been talking about our law enforcement is you can go on social media and find a video of a police officer having to discharge their firearm for whatever reason, right?
Yeah, of course.
Hundreds of them, right? But the ones that
Hundreds.
were sticking out in my head right now were the ones where you see like the law enforcement officer telling the suspect or the aggravator, if you want to call him that as well, put down the weapon. Please put it down. I don't want to shoot you. Please don't make me do this. Please don't make me do this. And then it happens, right? They end up having to protect themselves and or their fellow officers or the community due to this threat, right? And I won't say that this threat is a criminal threat. It could be a mental health person, right, that has a knife or a gun. They don't know. They don't know none of that, right? Then they take down the threat, and now I can't even imagine having to go either back to your shop or go back, to the precinct or whatever. And then you're going to have the people that are going to tell you, well, why the fuck did you wait so long? Why didn't you take him out sooner? You put us all at risk for sitting there and being scared to do your job, right? And then you're going to have the ones that are going to be like, no, you did great. I think you try to de-escalate it. Unfortunately, you had to do what you had to do. And then you're going to have the people that are going to be like, why did you shoot him at all? Like, we could have done this, and this. And I could see how even within their, I always call it a shop, right? Because in the military, you say, hey, I'm going to the shop. But in the
Right.
precinct, in the police office, whatever it's officially called, I can see how
Absolutely.
just even amongst themselves, they're just throwing their own opinion on something, right? Which is giving now that police officer is making their wound even bigger because they've already questioned the fact of, hey, like I said, you can see in the video, the ones that are like, hey, stop, I don't want to do this, please. Let's calm down. Let's not go down this road, blah, 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 blah. And then they just go back to the shop, get questioned or drilled even more. And then, like you both said, because I am not well versed in law enforcement unless I'm in the back seat of the car with handcuffs on. That's as far as my knowledge goes with them. But
Well, you're a sailor. You're probably picked up by the shore patrol a few
Right.
times.
So yes, I could only imagine how then going back to the shop and being kind of questioned from every different angle and perspective on why you took that shot, right? Why you
Right.
pulled the trigger, and
Exactly.
why it was either wrong, why it was either right, or why did you hesitate? You know,
You know
and
what? You know what I look like? You know what I say to myself? I said, there's a lot of people out there that are armchair quarterbacks, but until they walk in the shoes of these first responders, and and I say especially police officers because they got a hard way to go. Okay. Like I said, firefighters are like hugged and kissed all the time. Not too many cops are. You know what I mean? EMS are hugged and kissed, you know, and or thought of it a different way. Okay. And because of the nature of their job and the fact that they have that kind of power to take your freedom away, and if it's done, if it's done and the person is thrown onto the ground because of the nature of the situation, and and they're thrown in handcuffs and they're struggling with them and all that, it looks like that they're bullies, and they're not. This is the nature of the work. This is the nature of the work to protect you and me, and our families, communities, whatever you want to say, against the threat of pure evil sometimes. Okay, or against the threat of somebody going to be on a road and maybe and they caught them driving 65 miles an hour in a 25-mile zone. you know okay, to some people that seems like, hey, that's not an issue. Yeah, it is an issue because you could kill a lot of people. Okay, you're driving a 2-ton weapon, excuse me, at a higher speed than what's predicted for that road, right? So in essence, the police officer is actually doing a life-saving duty at that point. God knows how many people that so-called DUI or just driving crazily or whatever, could take out. And people don't look at it like that. They don't look at it like that. See, they don't look like that. What I recommend is for every citizen to get in back of a police car, ask for a ride along, and see what these cops do all day. Do like an 8-hour ride along with them and see whether you're a city officer, a state policeman, whatever. I don't know if state police allows that. I'm not sure, but there are local police and sheriff's offices do offer those ride-alongs. And just see in an 8-hour period what the hell they have to do, especially in an urban department. Even though suburban departments and stuff like that see a lot of crap too, and rural areas too, of course. But do a ride around with an NYPD officer, Chicago police officer, Los Angeles, or any of those areas, and in between, suburban, law enforcement, whatever, and see. Maybe you'll develop a different opinion. Instead of sitting back in your chair, watching the news and saying, oh, that guy's a scumbag.
To that end, as far as ride-alongs, Frank, you're old enough to remember this. Luis, you're probably not. Matter of fact, I know you're not, unless you were watching this sort of thing at the age of 6 or 7. There was a show that went on for 7 years called Hill Street Blues,
Yes,
and it started in 1981 and it went through 1987.
I know
And it
Hill
was,
Street Blues.
yes, it was groundbreaking because it was set in an unnamed urban area of any city in the United States. And it was rough, it was raw, it was crude, and it showed what cops have to go through every day. And it humanized cops in that entire series. It
It did.
humanized all of them beautifully, humanely, and brilliantly, including the lead character, Frank Furillo, who was the precinct captain of Hill
Yes,
Street Station, who's a recovering alcoholic. They were
right.
that they were that honest about it.
Yeah, they were that
And
honest. You're right. That was in the
yep,
80s, right?
it was the
Yeah.
80s, and I am watching it. I have the entire series on Amazon Prime, and I
Oh, do
still
you
watch it
really?
to this day. And I'm going to tell you why too.
Mhm.
Even though it's Hollywood and they have to take some liberties and throw in
Of
some
course, yeah,
satire
always.
and whatnot, that television show for me, I didn't know it at the time. In addition to being brilliant television, it served
Well,
as
there
a
are
primer to
several
understanding.
examples of that. Also, like NYPD Blue. Then there was what do you call it? Law and Order.
Yep. But Hill Street set the tone. Hill Street set the example. And
Absolutely
the primer I was getting on post-traumatic stress disorder, I didn't know it at the time, was through the roof. I
right.
am forever grateful to that show, those producers and the writers and the actors for putting together
I
part of my
I agree.
education.
I agree.
Oh,
I think my favorite character was the sergeant. You know, y'all
let's be
be.
careful out
I
there.
said, well, let's be careful out there.
That's right. That's
There's a
right.
reason for that during the briefing.
Hmm.
You know, increase your situational awareness when you're out there.
Correct.
Yeah, because we know what the evil that's out there. And nobody
Yes.
knows it better. Nobody knows it better than a police or deputy. Or if you want a comparison with that, the military warrior who has seen combat. Say
Man's inhumanity to man.
Yeah, exactly. New York City NYPD actually has a merit, I should say an award called the Combat Cross.
Mhm.
The Combat Cross is given for an officer that's involved, in a gunfight, actually.
Mhm.
And it is an award that's not given liberally. It is an award that, um, I guess you would call it almost equivalent to like a bronze or a silver star, maybe. You know, but it's called the Combat Cross,
Uh,
and it's given for a reason. And let me tell you something. When we talk about moral injury, right, among veterans and first responders, the officer that's involved in a bad shoot and may kill somebody accidentally or may kill somebody that is a involved in a crossfire, let's say, doesn't he or she suffer moral injury?
oh, yes.
So
And even though
and what
it,
you said before about being put under investigation, being given temporary duty, being ostracized for a period of time where nobody's like really like talking to you or interacting with you anywhere until you're found innocent. That's
And if you
that is a hard that is a hard thing to live through for
and
sure.
yeah, and I would imagine like one thing I've learned um, is words matter, right? Words have meaning. Words have power to them, and I would imagine it's not even. And correct me, like I said, if I'm wrong, and if any of our guests out there, uh, were prior law enforcement or anything like that, and know a little bit more about it, um, is not even being found innocent because I don't think you're on trial for a crime. It's just being justified in your actions, right? And I think that in itself, right, when you say, well, you were justified in what you did, it reminds me of the stories, and heard a lot about it. Um, and I don't know how factual they are, but you heard a lot about it during the Vietnam era times where you would hear a platoon got told by their OIC, their officer in charge or their commanding officer, we're going into this village and everything in there just decimated, right? And so, yes, innocent women, children, even men have gotten their lives taken away, due to those kind of orders. So the young private was justified in what they did, right? They were because they were executing orders that were given to them. They're justified. Now, were they innocent in what they did? That's a whole different definition. You know what I mean? And I couldn't even imagine the what goes on in somebody's head, like you were talking, Frank, right? That had to discharge their weapon, and let's say, there was a civilian child or person that got crossed in that crossfire, right? And there's a difference between being innocent and being justified, right? And and I don't know how I could ever carry a guilt like that. I would call it a guilt, right? A moral injury like that, where it's like, okay, just because I was justified doesn't mean that that young person's life isn't gone still. You know what I mean? At the actions of myself. And I could see how that could just open up such a big moral injury for someone like that.
I don't know if you've guys, I'm sure you have, but have seen the movie Platoon.
Yes.
Yep.
At the end, towards one of the scenes of Platoon, there is a scene where they go into the village, of course, and then they get into a hut. And there's, I believe it could be like a mama-san, a grandmother, that was there with a mentally challenged child or a mentally challenged grandchild or something. And they came out of their little hiding hole there. And here's about 3 or 4 of the grunts that are there taking, saying, well, what do we have here? They uncovered, and then they're assuming everybody's Viet Cong, and Charlie Sheen starts shooting his M16 at the boy's feet, and he only has one leg, and he has to balance himself on one leg, and he starts dancing around as the rounds are going off. And then the other guy, okay, who has a tremendous amount of hate in his heart and his mind, and because they are, and he's telling them they have a preconceived notion about the culture and about the people, and their characteristics and stuff. And he says, don't you see that he's laughing? That's the way a gook laughs. And he takes the butt of his rifle and bashes his head in. And he says, whoa, I've never seen brains come out like that. And you participate, and Charlie Sheen started crying and everything. So let's say we replace Charlie Sheen with a real soldier, in which these things have happened. Looking at things like the My Lai massacre and stuff like that back in Dom. I believe I mentioned that the last time I was actually on as a guest. And you mean to tell me that guy is not going to go home with moral injury? And the whole thing is covered up, and the sergeant, one of the sergeants that was there, he says, hey, buddy, let's get out of here. Nobody saw nothing. Okay, let's get out of here now. So it wasn't witnessed by anybody except them 3 or 4 or whatever they were. That is moral injury. You're going to go home with moral injury, even though you didn't really, kill the kid. Okay, and the grandmother. Okay, but you go home with that sense of, what did I do here? And don't tell me that doesn't become a haunting event for that veteran.
No, 100%. I think another good movie that displays moral injury even before anyone really knew what they were showing, because they thought they were making a movie more about like PTSD and combat stress and all that.
Yeah.
But Born on the 4th of July. That's exactly what his character, every from him questioning why the fuck were we in Vietnam? What the fuck do these medals even mean? You know what I mean? I think
you question everything.
Yeah, I think Born on the 4th of July is a great movie that he picks, what moral injury is. And we talk about the Vietnam era, and what did we do there? And I think we're seeing a lot of that with the post 9/11 era veterans, right? After 20 years of war, it's like I have a lot of buddies. I'm not gonna say, all of my buddies, but I will say probably the majority of us, and maybe because we have the same thought process. So it's just kind of like that confirmation bias, right? You're going to see and hear things that are going to confirm what you believe in, right? And so, but I do have a lot of buddies that we sit here and talk like, what the fuck did we fight for 20 years? Because, I mean, if I could at least tell, my family, hey, you're paying $1 a gallon of gas, at least I could tell you we did it for something. You know what I mean? But I sit back and I still wonder, like,
I hear you. I hear you. I hear you. And I feel
so
the same.
so
I
definitely
feel the
that
same.
that guilt, that betrayal, that can last for
But dude,
years.
I don't know if you've ever seen what's his name? Former Navy SEAL Sean Ryan. You ever seen those guys? That guy?
Yeah.
And he said something that, you know, he said that he's a young, he's a new Christian. But as he looks back, retrospectively, and he looks back in his life as a Navy SEAL and as an adult, general, and as he was growing up, he said the only thing we've been doing is having wars. Having wars. And he said that, and at one time he thought that Christianity was an illusion, and the whole Christian thing he believes was like a conspiracy theory until he became, very involved, with Jesus and became a believer. But before that, he was saying, where is this? In other words, what he was saying, to the way I interpreted when I saw this episode, was, where was Jesus during all of this killing and war and sending me over to places where, I really didn't want to be at, and kill all these people and the history of war, and he was going way back. He was going to the Roman Empire and, and things like that. So, where Rome ruled the world for 1,000 years, you know what I mean? That type of thing. And, gladiators and stuff. So, and I could see where he's coming from. I could see where it's coming from, where you could lose your beliefs or question your Christian beliefs. I could see where there, or your religious beliefs, in whatever you are, whether you're, a Muslim or Jewish or whatever. And I could see where that could, get to that fundamental level of your, your religious beliefs and actually affect your perception of them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. Um,
But then the
especially like,
argument comes up, well, that's the devil's thing.
right. Yeah.
Jesus
Especially,
didn't cause that.
right. Especially when, like you said, you're already, um, and I can only speak about my own personal experiences but you're already like in a different country, fighting what you believe is, terrorism, right? And I always tell people, me being a corpsman or a medic, I had what I call the hidden blessing that my job was to try to prevent as many casualties on the battlefield as possible, to
Yeah. And
include even the enemy, right? Um, but I couldn't imagine, going into the service with a deep rooted foundation in a religious belief of either, you know murder or killing is bad in general, right? And then you join the military and you have to go execute orders that involve you having to take out a life. Whether we agree with how that person is living their life, right? And I'm gonna go to the extreme of something that I think everyone that knows me personally and Doc Barry's gonna be like, yeah, that sounds like Luis. I think one of the lowest people on this earth are pedophiles. Like I have no remorse for like I'm one of those people like if especially today's day and age, if there's video and DNA evidence, like you should just be walked out the back of the courthouse and shot dead type of. That's how little regard I have for them, right? But at the end of the day, they're still a human being. You know what I'm saying? And I know a lot of people that are really grounded in their beliefs that, only God or our creator can have the ultimate judgment. That's not up for me to decide, right? And
Well,
so I
in prison, I've actually had the privilege of working as a health provider at a correctional institution
mm,
for a while. Pedophiles are pedophiles are the lowest in the food chain
yeah,
over there, and they're the first ones to get raped, beat up, and killed. You know,
right,
but I understand what you're saying. Yeah, they are human beings, and they deserve psychological treatment, medical treatment, whatever, right? Because that's not for us to judge as providers of a psychological or a medical intervention, right?
right.
We're there to help people no matter where they come from, and that to me that's another form of moral injury.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. But like I was saying, so I
I
mean,
mean, do I let the scumbag that shot the cop and is on the operating table dying, and the perp is also badly, even more severely injured because of the police officer's return fire. Should I leave that son of a bitch, to live or die? Who do I treat first? Triage.
right,
Who do you
right,
treat first? The cop or the perp who's bleeding out more? Police officer's not bleeding out, but the perp is. What do we do? Got to do the right thing, right? Right thing. But somewhere in the back of your mind, you say to yourself, shot this great police officer, done nothing but help people, and truly a good man or a good woman. And in the back of your head, your reptilian brain is telling you to do otherwise.
Mhm.
right. Yeah.
Oh
But
yeah.
yeah,
You
I
know,
mean,
that can become a moral battle
absolutely,
you
absolutely. I mean,
for some people.
yeah, I don't know. I didn't have many encounters. I think three, in all of my deployments where, we were involved in some sort of firefight, and I had an injured Marine. Um, None of them that were critical enough where they end up passing away, but injured enough where we had a medevac come out of the battlefield, and while the Marines are doing their sweep of like the rest of the building or whatever, they come across the combatants, and they're still alive, and they're like, "Hey doc, when you have a chance, we have some live ones back here that you need to take care of." And yeah, if I only had one Marine that was injured, this is a real situation of mine. I only had one Marine that was injured. He was already stabled, already had bandages, tourniquets on them, just waiting for the medevac. I had to go and treat, two of the commands that I knew were trying to take us out, right? But the moral and ethical oath that I took as a corpsman was retreat everybody, right? But it's a really hard um
Or if you're,
and,
let's
and
say let's say you're in special ops and you're on a mission, and it may be a very direct action mission, which is very covert or whatever, or maybe even a black ops, you know, where you have to employ, let's say, silent kill techniques,
Mm.
right? You know, maybe cut a carotid artery or two, or jugular or whatever, you know what I mean? Or get the guy in the back with a knife, or, use silencers or what have you and take them out. And at the same time, you have to be, as a special ops medic, whether you're an IDC on a SEAL team, whether you're a MARSOC special amphibious medical specialist, corpsman, whether you're a special forces 18 Delta, you're also trained to kill people.
Mhm.
You have to master those skills as well as your medical specialty. Okay? That creates a great deal of moral injury right there. Because now you're in an ambiguous state and flipping back and forth from being a warrior to being a healer. That's why I went to a conference, and a friend of mine who was in the military is also a PhD psychologist and stuff like that. And he was giving a lecture, and he wrote me a personal note to a great warrior healer. Love Doc so and so. And he handed it to me. And he said, "You came to mind every time I was talking up there." And I was in the front row listening to him too. And I still have it. I still have the paper that he wrote it on. But here we are. And the title is Warrior Healer, because you're doing both. You're flip-flopping back and forth from being a health professional, saving lives, to being a warrior, and doing what you need to do, whether it's planting explosives, whether it's, forming part of an ambush, or doing whatever you have to do, and taking people out. You have to be able to do both and
Right.
live with those decisions. Figured would flip it up there. I think special ops medics have probably some of the highest burden of moral injury than a lot of others as well, just because
Well,
of the nature of their dual duties, as it were.
right, right. Well, let me ask you this, because now I don't know how it goes down in like the special forces community at all. I have a vague idea on how we Navy SEALs become medics. So, dude, you're talking 25 years ago. All Navy SEALs went to boot camp and then went to their formal schooling, whether like me being a hospital corpsman, or you could go be a bosun's mate or a quartermaster, and then from there you put in a package to select to go to be a Navy SEAL. So the way it sounds to me was back in the day, it used to be you used to go learn to do this one job, but now if you want to be a special person, you go and become a special person and pass the pipeline. The way it's done now, a lot more so is, yeah, you can actually join the Navy with a contract as a Navy SEAL. So you
Yeah,
go to boot camp, and then after boot camp, you go to SEAL preparatory training pipeline.
for
You
bud
pass,
for buds, for
yeah.
buds,
Well, it's before
basic
buds.
underwater demolition.
The no the preparatory is before buds. So if you pass a preparatory at Great Lakes, then you get to go to buds in Coronado.
Yeah,
And then if you pass buds in Coronado, from my understanding, and I do have a lot of SEAL buddies, I should probably ask them this one day. But from my understanding, from there they get to, not they themselves, but the command says, "Hey, we need more intel people. We need more explosive experts. We need only so many medics, right?" So then they, I don't know if they get to choose if they get to go to one of the schools or not, or if the schoolhouse itself says you're going to go to learn medicine, you're going to go to learn explosives, vice versa. So for me, the way it sounds like is they shifted the mindset of like, let's say me, I was in the Navy, I was a corpsman, and there was maybe for all of 2 weeks I was like, oh, I want to go be a Navy SEAL. Then I realized I just fucking, I have no desire on being wet and cold and sandy for my whole life.
so so
So I was
you
like,
so
so I was like,
you don't think Hell Week is a vacation?
yeah, no. So I was like, no, I'm good. I'm good on that. I don't need that. But I think it would have been different for me to
And you have to
transition,
sleep and eat at the same time.
right? I think it would have been different for me to switch that switch, right? To go from a warrior to a healer, because I was a healer first for so much
Right.
of my career. If I ever would have gone to buds, where I think now making everyone realize that, hey, you're a shooter first and foremost. Let's not get that wrong. You know, saying the main reason why you're here and you're gonna and when you make it through buds is so that you know warfare. Now,
Yes.
after that, if you go learn how to, blow shit up a little bit better than your buddy to your left, and if you go learn how to put on tourniquets better than your buddy to the right, then that's your secondary job. And I would assume and I would hope that would make it easier for our top tier operators, right? Especially
Yes.
the medical professionals to understand, like, hey, my main mission with this unit is I am a shooter first. You know what I mean? And if one of them goes down, then my secondary mission is to try to get that person back up on the gun, or
Yeah,
at
and
least
it's hard to
stabilize them.
it's hard too. Like for example, I teach tactical combat casualty care, and I teach tactical emergency casualty care. I'm an NAEMT instructor in those areas and some other areas. And I could tell you this. I could tell you that you know, one of the things that you teach people is a paradigm shift, and the paradigm shift is fire superiority saves lives. Concept number one.
Yeah.
Fire superiority. And you know, and if you're a health professional who's never been in the military or who's never been in a tactical medic type of situation, where you're working with a special entry team or a SWAT team or whatever you want to call it, special emergency response team or whatever, to come to that realization is a mind blower and an eye opener. If you have fire superiority over an enemy, that's going to save lives. That concept itself is just anathema to what you to the common thing saying that, well, medical care and and rescue and things like that. But how are you going to rescue in a tactical situation where bullets are flying and bombs are blowing all over you? There's a certain method for it, right? You got care under fire, right? Care under fire. Now, I've seen some interesting videos where, and these were Vietnam videos actually in training, and I could tell you what it showed. It showed infantrymen getting shot, combat medic going out there, right, or corpsman going out there and trying to patch up the guy that was just taken down, and a sniper taking down the corpsman or the medic. And that happens a lot. That happens a lot, right? If you don't follow the doctrine of care under fire, and you have 3 or 4 combat medics piled up on top of the guy that was shot. Because especially in war, and I know that the Viet Cong, after studying, some of the stuff they had to study, in terms of military history, the Viet Cong were trained to take out people in order. First of all, it's a commanding officer of the unit, if possible, or somebody that's leading you. That's number one. Number 2 on the list is the medic or the corpsman. And how did they know that they were them? They were wearing red crosses, right? Some of them, right? They were wearing red crosses. Another issue too, they stopped the red crosses, right? They took them off. So once you said medic up, or hey, medic, and the guy went flying towards a casualty and started running towards them, boom, you're taken out. Because they were yelling medic or corpsman up, whatever. Okay, we used to use Band-Aid on the line. We need a Band-Aid on the line. Did the Viet Cong understand that? No. They didn't know what the hell Band-Aid meant. But we used it. because, you know, Americans got hit. You know, the medics in the military forces, our military forces got hip to the fact, and our commanding officers got hip to the fact that every time you yell medic, you're going to get, you know, the medics are going to get shot at. And the Viet Cong were very, very good at that. They were brilliant at it, prioritizing, you know, the order of individual to be killed, starting with the CO, you know, or, you know, whoever is leading your team leader or whatever. So instead of doing all of that, we started using terms like Band-Aid on the line, started doing hand signals, you know, things like that, and got rid of the Red Cross, all of that crap. Much of that came out of the Vietnam War.
Yeah. We had seen, I know,
Kind of like the predecessor to doing all of that.
yeah, because we were seeing that in Iraq and Afghanistan as well too. So we I think it was like my 05 deployment, I want to say around there is when we started getting intel, where we started capturing videos of the terrorist cells, whether it was ISIS, Al Qaeda, I don't know. See, this is the thing. Like, I don't even know the fuck we're fighting for 20 years now anymore either, because we're giving money to everybody now. But that's my own other agenda. We ain't gonna talk about that tonight. But
Right.
anywho,
No,
but
hey,
anywho, we got videotapes of how they
how
would
much? $80 million a week
a
to the
week.
Taliban?
Yeah, fucking ridiculous, man.
What?
But yeah, they were
Jesus.
capturing video of Humvees, or when the MRAPs came around, where they would
Right.
have the pressure plate go off, and that one was just big enough that it would disable the vehicle and hopefully not kill the occupants, because they realized exactly that what the Viet Congs realized was, if we could just maim 2 or 3 people, then there's going to be about 10 people that are going to be running to set up like a perimeter around them. 2 or 3 people are going to be jumping into this hole to try to start pulling them out of vehicles or whatnot. So we'll just put a secondary device in there that's command detonated, and wait until, like 5 or 10 people come running towards that vehicle that was hit, and we'll just blow them up as well. And
Well, I'll tell you, you know, a lot of those explosive devices that were set up also were diversionary. Yeah, it killed and maimed people too. But guess what? Guess what that led to? Secondary shooters
absolutely.
like
Yep.
that, like you were saying. Yeah. So
What is,
it actually, yeah.
folks, just for those of us who don't know, including me, what is a secondary shooter?
A secondary shooter would be someone that comes out of the let's say out of, you know, they would start coming after you. You would have the armed assault after an explosive device went on, because the explosive device led to a diversionary tactic. And what happened is that the shooters would come out and start, you know, sniping people, and, you know, or using automatic weapons and all of that. So it was like a diversionary tactic, which also maimed and kill, but it wasn't the main. You know, it led to a main armed assault,
And
kind of like
sometimes,
facilitated that.
and Doc Berry as well, sometimes what would happen is, especially in urban environments, right? Sometimes there's only maybe two ways in and out of a place, right? Think of a lot of neighborhoods, even in the United States, right? You pull up a map, you know, there might be only 2 or 3 routes to get in and out of your neighborhood. That's it. You know what I'm saying? Hundreds and hundreds of houses. So think of it that way. And they'll maybe set off a device in one of those entrance route, where it forces the rest of the unit to have to switch over and now find a different route. And the enemy kind of knows, okay, the only other places that they're really going to be able to go will be along this route. So we're going to set up the main forces here. The diversion is going to be over there to take them off their main route. So they're going to have to reroute themselves, whether it's a foot patrol or whether it's a convoy, doesn't matter, right? and so then they get diverted to go a different way to try to, hopefully not run into more bombs and shit like that, and then they just end up running into an
Right.
ambush or
Exactly
war.
right. Exactly right. And you know what? And that's been brought into the civilian world, those types of tactics,
Yes, yes,
unfortunately. So, and that's why we have a lot of situations now where every day you see something, almost every day, you get to see, an armed assault on a school, on a, active shooter situations, um, you know, possibly also with the involvement of an IED, pipe bomb, something like that. Set there to either, give, give the first response situation or the first responders an idea that they're being targeted as well, which they have been. Firefighters have been shot and killed. Obviously police officers have and stuff like that. And this whole thing, the tactical situation, or what I call tactical ultra violence, is being, has grown in the civilian community using military or paramilitary tactics. These people are not stupid. They're not stupid. They know exactly what they're doing. And I guarantee you that this is going to continue, unfortunately.
yeah.
You know,
Unfortunately, right?
that's why I encourage, and Charlie knows, Charlie Frederici, Doc Berry's friend, my friend, over in Albany. Is he still in Albany? I believe he is. Albany Medical Center or something. Yeah, so he's an emergency manager, former firefighter, and a respiratory therapist. Very talented guy, very funny guy too. But anyway, to make a long story short, Charlie and I have discussed these types of situations in terms of emergency preparedness for the communities in the United States and to strengthen our domestic preparedness for these military style tactics. I mean, it's just a point where everybody just have an increased situational awareness and some degree of emergency preparedness. But along with that comes complacency,
Yep.
which is unfortunate and which complacency kills.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Complacency definitely kills.
Not just complacency, but also, Doc Berry, do you know the actual terminology of it? Where it's what is it called? The bystander symptom, where someone could be bleeding out and 100 people walk by, and it's just oh well, somebody else will take care of it. Somebody else will do it.
Yes.
Right. Yep, bystander effect, and it's also known as,
Bystander
or at
effect.
least when I was in school, diffusion of responsibility.
Yes,
In other
that's
words,
the
the
bigger
more
what I was looking
people
for.
that see it, the less people are likely to help. And if I recall correctly, the number has to be between 5 and 7 witnesses. That optimizes the chance of somebody stepping in to help.
Yep.
Now, you guys remember the Las Vegas shooting, the mass shooting in Las Vegas a couple of years back?
Yeah, yeah.
Attending that concert were ex-military medics and corpsmen, and they knew exactly what to do, and also like retired or off-duty firefighters and stuff like that. They knew to put on even improvised tourniquets, and they saved people's lives by stopping the bleed. Just by doing that, just by tying tourniquets on and providing some degree of reassurance and treating them for shock, they did a phenomenal job. They jumped right into action, which was amazing to me. And like casualty under fire, care under fire. They were dragging people to areas of concealment and what do you call it, protection. So that was amazing to me that that they were doing that. There was no bystander effect there. They just jumped into action.
Yep.
Right.
And yeah, and there was recently a guy that was trapped on an escalator, and I think it was in New England and Boston or something like that, where his shirt got caught under the escalator stuff, and basically everybody was passing him by. And guess what? There was a button right on the escalator handle that could stop the whole thing from doing that.
Yeah, the
Nobody
emergency
even
stop button.
nobody even went to press that button,
Wow.
and he wound up dying.
Well, it was also
I
kind of
mean,
like
I guess that's part of the whole thing. But anyway,
it was also kind of like the a few years ago the young lady that was doused in like gasoline and lit on fire. I mean, I know we talk about the Ukrainian young girl that got stabbed in the neck, right, in Charlotte, North Carolina. But before her
yeah,
was that young lady in New York where she was lit on fire. And we us three and our audience members can let's agree, you don't instantaneously die by fire. You know what I
yeah,
mean? And
yes.
people were sitting there recording instead of, why didn't no one like put their jacket over her, try to, douse, not douse them out, but the flames, put out the flames due to lack of oxygen, right? None of that, right? And then
No,
Frank, you talked about warfare tactics being brought onto our soil. Very true. I mean, was it just in New York where they try to make that bomb go off, but it didn't end up going off, right?
yeah, they thwarted that attempt. Yeah,
Right. That, I mean,
thank God.
the Boston marathon bombing that happened a few years
Yep.
ago, and
Yes,
then shit. You want to take it even further than that? Let's go to Atlanta, Georgia, during the Olympics
the Olympics in the '90s.
in the '90s,
Uh,
right? And then
that's a good point.
if you want to
Hmm.
take it even before that, I know a lot of people talk about the World Trade Center when it went down on 9/11, but we forget that in the '80s the World Trade Center was bombed as well by a terrorist
Let me just
organization.
state something. Let me just state something real quick. And yeah, just to follow up on your point, Doc. The physical effects are tremendous, right? The devastating. But you know what the biggest issue is? I think, and I've heard, I've read, is the psychological footprint or thumbprint on that event. The psychological casualties supersede the physical casualties
Mhm.
because it even involves people that were never even involved in the event. When it's a broad spectrum psychological footprint. And look what 9/11 did to our country psychologically, and it just shook everybody, right? And pretty much um, not being able to like know if that was going to happen in their city or their town or whatever, and something similar to it or whatever.
Frank, you said something absolutely 100% I agree with. My daughter, well, I have two older boys that are in their 20s, but my daughter just turned 18 last year. She's going on 19. So
Right.
she is definitely, hey, I'm an adult now. Um, we've kind of given her we've loosened up the reins as she's grown up, as you should. I think every all parent should. But like she'll go to concerts now, right? And if I go to a concert with me and my wife, the crazy thing is I'm not thinking about all of these crazy scenarios. It's kind of like if something happens, I almost assume like my body's gonna know what to do. All right. Hey, I've been in a situation where an explosion has gone off or gunfire, right? Um, but when my daughter's going to like concerts nowadays, like that's all that runs through my head because
It's like you're
it,
freaking out.
yeah, man, it's no longer like, oh man, did you hear what happened in such and such state? What a tragedy, I'm glad we don't have to worry about things like that here. Well, we do. We have to worry about that fucking everywhere in the United States now,
Mhm.
Everywhere.
you know? Yeah.
So what's happened is that the battleground or the battlefield, the combat situation has expanded into our non-combatant environment, okay, and has actually intertwined in our society that almost everybody, even though they don't, okay, is considered a combatant in a way, okay, or has an effect that's similar to being in combat, psychologically speaking, okay, in terms of developing things like PTSD and I don't know so much about moral injury, but PTSD for sure. So it's more epidemiologically, it really becomes more of a broader state of dysfunction or state of psychological effect that supersedes the physical one. And that's what I'm trying to say. And even though, maintaining that state of vigilance, let's say after an event happens, even months, years later, and you're walking down the street and constantly like looking over your shoulder, and things like that, that into itself is not living normally. You're living under consistent traumatic stress in a way from stuff that's happened, right? And like I said, the battle has come to American soil and also to other, areas, in the West, to their soil in Germany and France. And, in France, you had the shooting there a long while ago. I don't know how many years yet, but where they, they had armed shooters that were quite well prepared. I mean, if you go back in, some recent modern history of Mumbai, the Mumbai attacks, right, in India, that involved a lot of taking over a hotel there and, slaughtering people inside that hotel. That has a lasting psychological effect. And that's why I say too, psychological footprint or thumbprint, whatever you want to say, is larger than sometimes the actual physical casualty situation.
Let me just jump in here. As far as what you guys were talking about, looking over your shoulder, situational awareness, hypervigilance. Hypervigilance. Now, yes, it's true. That serves as a magnificent tool to keep people alive. I don't dispute that for a minute. But the darker side that also has to be understood and explored is the extraordinary amount of mental and emotional bandwidth that costs to keep up that level of security. You have to discuss you have to discuss both and how they interplay with each other. And yeah, it takes what, 6 months for a broken leg to heal. All right, to offer an example of physical
Yeah,
healing. Here's a story
an
for you.
analogy. Yeah,
Here's a story for you about they were doing like a conference with the last of the First Marine Division folks who survived World War II. Someplace this was years ago, and these magnificent war horses were there, and they were setting up the speakers and the microphone to do the presentations and the dedications and whatnot. And somebody who did not know what they were doing tapped on the microphone. And all of those first Mardiv guys just either flinched or ducked underneath the tables.
really.
Yeah. And they're well into their 80s, their 90s. This stuff goes on for a lifetime, and people don't get that. So let me try to
Yeah.
explain it. Do with that
Mm,
what you will.
yeah. So tapping on a microphone will set off that trigger.
Yep.
Is the
But it sounds
trigger
like
for a reaction? Yeah.
it sounds like gunfire. And I'll yank it
Yeah.
right into my own consulting room, which is 6/10 of a mile from where I am right now. In my consulting room, there's a radiator that was probably put in when the building was constructed in 1903, and it's an old radiator that makes a noise, and it makes a particular noise that sounds like a gunshot.
Wow.
And I have to warn all of my people, listen, this radiator was installed during the administration of James K. Polk, and it has the personality of a wet mop. and it makes a noise
Oh
that you
God.
might flinch at.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I have to prepare my guys who come see me because of a noise out of an old radiator.
Right, right, right,
It's
right.
all the fuck over the place is what I'm
Holy
trying to say.
shit. That's interesting.
Yep.
Wow, see? Yeah, it's amazing too. It really is that those types of like sounds and sights can just unbelievably cause that triggering mechanism to activate and just like, geez, yeah,
especially and I don't know if there's any research on this, but so human beings are only born with two inherent fears. That's the fear of heights and of loud noises. So now you're talking about gunfire bombs, right? And then
Mhm.
causing psychological injuries, moral injuries, PTSD, things like that. Um, you, I guess I don't know what I'm trying to say, but like, would it be different if guns were silent? You know what I'm saying? Like, would it be different if bombs were silent? You know what I mean? Because you know, to bring up a fear that inherently are born with, one of only two fears, in such a
right.
way, right? That causes long term effects. I did read this one book a while ago, and I think it was on combat or on killing. It was one of those two books. Written
Dr.
by,
Dr. Grossman's book.
yeah, Dr. Grossman's book, right? Who's also a Vietnam
Yeah,
veteran guy. But
yeah,
he talked about how when guns were first introduced, you know, we still had people fighting with bows and arrows and slingshots, and they
right.
were a lot more accurate and deadly than our first guns, because our first guns weren't muzzled, right? You'd pull a lead ball into a steel pipe, put a lot of pressure behind it, which was the gunpowder, and hope that it hit your target, and it usually didn't. But why was the gun so effective against, like, let's take America for example, right? Against the Native Americans, right, or Indians, whatever the politically correct term is nowadays. What made it
Native
so
American.
Yeah, Native American. What made it so effective against them
Mhm.
when they had at that time a superior weapon, which was honestly long range bows and arrows? Well, it
Yeah,
was that loud thundering noise of the gunfire that made it
right.
so
Sure.
effective. Yeah,
I got the just the audio effect. Yeah.
yeah, hmm
Well, talk about when you were talking about loading up that weapon, you reminded me of the back in the day when we as kids used to make things called zip guns. I
Ah,
don't know. I don't know if you took a radio aerial off of a car, you could get a bullet and actually configure it with an elastic band, and your radio aerial would be your talk about improvised weapons now would be your you would be a gun. But now gangs have Tech Nines and and AK-47s and freaking all types of machine pistols and shit like that. That it's not like it used to be with that. Gangs would either have knives, their fists, or these zip guns. So more example of that. But anyway, having said that, I'm really concerned about the psychological effects of that are being imposed on the average citizen as a result of what's going on, not only overseas, but the possibility of terrorist attacks here in the United States or asymmetric warfare, as it's known. So when asymmetric warfare is used to, for example, a guerrilla force against a bigger force, and utilizing guerrilla tactics in order to, um, incur casualties among the much more superior, numerically superior force. So that's happening here. Asymmetric warfare is going on in the United States, in a way, and I think it's going to get to the point where we're going to see a lot more of that. And are we prepared to handle the psychological casualties? We're barely prepared. I mean, we're not fully prepared to handle the physical casualties either.
Right. Yeah.
You
I
know,
was gonna say we
our
can't even.
healthcare infrastructure is not designed to be like a like a military medical unit that has like endless resources that could be flown in and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Just doesn't happen that way.
Right.
You know, we
You
don't
know,
have those types of. Go ahead.
we were talking about how noises can be damaging, and somebody put in the chat that loud noises are especially triggering. And yet it's ironic that we use noises to warn, such as um, tornado warning sirens. All right, they strike fear in the hearts of anybody who listens to them. And I wish I could somehow post up. There's a YouTube video of a Chicago tornado siren that is the most. It's a nightmare to listen to. All right, it's it. And it's not just the usual, the traditional sirens.
I used to
This
hear
sounds
those go up in Alabama when I was over there.
I was gonna
like a
say
horror movie, and I wish we could post a link to it.
Yeah,
It's an incredibly effective warning, that something terrible is about to happen. But we also bring up the point that even though that noise saves lives, that noise can be damaging.
Mhm.
damaging.
Speaking of
Absolutely.
a dual nature, it saves lives and harms at the same
Harm
time.
at the same time. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I agree.
I mean,
Yeah, I agree. I think one of the things I've seen, I do a lot of studies on nuclear war scenarios, and that's kind of like what I and it's like my daughter calls me Doctor Doom. But anyway, to make a long story short, I'd like to see with this new nuclear war scenarios, and you look at some of these hypotheticals where they do not want to blow the siren, the air raid siren, because it would just create mass panic. So they know that the missiles are inbound, right? That they've reached a terminal phase where they re-entering from outer space, well, upper space anyway,
the
and
stratosphere.
they're in the terminal phase of the attack, and the nuclear warhead's about to explode, or on or over a major city, let's say, and you hear the guy saying, "Well, why blast the we're just going to create mass panic. They're going to die anyway."
Hey, Luis, I just found the video of that Chicago siren, and I texted it to you. I wonder if there's any way you could pull it up.
Well, I will. I'll look at it. I don't think I could do it right this minute, but I will look at that. But that's
I'll send it to you too, Frank. It's
I
we're
hear it.
talking about
I
the same
just
one.
heard it. My heart's starting to
Unbelievable.
palpitate. I hate tornadoes, man. Tornadoes freak me out. I hate them more than hurricanes. Yeah, those are freaky things to look at too.
Yep.
Tornado. But anyway, I understand. Yeah,
Good.
absolutely. Yeah, it has a dual meaning. Yeah, I mean a dual effect.
I mean,
But
even talking about dual meaning and dual effect, and I know we're talking about like loud noises and gunfire, especially being veterans or whatnot. Um, I don't know how many funeral service y'all have attended of downed service members, right?
mhm,
That we have lost. But just look at the audience when they do the 21 gun salute. You know what I'm saying? Such an honorable thing. Don't get me wrong, and I'm not advocating to remove it from funeral
yeah,
services at all whatsoever. But look at everybody, even those service members that served alongside the buddy, right? Whether male, female, doesn't matter,
Right.
that they're putting in the ground. Everyone, when that sound goes off, and we all know it, right? Ready, aim, and you see them do their thing, and all of us that served in uniform know as soon as you hear the word fire, that round's gonna go off. But just look at the whole crowd and how everyone. I don't think I've
everyone's
ever
like
been. Everyone
flinching.
flinched
Everyone's
all
flinching.
3 times, all 3 times, right? Everyone does, and
Yeah,
that's the power of that loud noise. You know what I mean?
it is. It absolutely is. And it comes up in, like when you've been in combat, it comes up in your dreams as well.
Mhm.
Those same loud noises.
100%. That's why I believe
It's
that.
amazing how it's amazing that when when you're dreaming and stuff like that, how those noises can seem for real.
Absolutely. And why veterans or service members that have lived through those traumatic events in their life, right, will wake up, you know, feeling like that, like they're there, because that noise that went off in their head in their dream, right, puts them on such high alert. And unfortunately, if they have a loved one sleeping next to them, sometimes that loved one has, seen the ugly side of what it's like to be woken up to a loud noise like that, and trying to, you know is this a fight or flight
Well,
situation, you know
yes, it is a fight or flight situation. That's something I wanted to hit upon because we do have that. Years ago and it's embedded in our primitive brains that years ago, in prehistoric times, you have to fight off maybe like a saber-toothed tiger, right? And then that would go away. That fear would go away, would subside. But now in our society, we have this constant fight or flight reaction where our adrenaline, our cortisol levels and things like that can be physically measured, that we are under constant stress. All of those stress hormones get elevated in our blood, and if you've been in combat, and if you've been through, or if you've been in areas where you've been subjected to, let's say you've been in a life and death situation as a first responder, when those dreams come about, or when that day terror comes about, you can actually measure those levels in people's blood. And actually, I mean, if you had real time, they do get elevated, and some of them are chronically elevated at this point, where it can cause other types of diseases, chronic illnesses and stuff like that. Like
yeah,
too much
cardiovascular
cortisol is
diseases,
not good for you at all.
right?
And that's what puts on our belly fat for men, for the most part, and it's just designed to do that. But it's a constant now. It's like it's
Yeah.
constantly, bloodstream and stuff.
Yeah, when you're wondering why, mid 30 to mid 40 males and females that are in relatively good health, right, are dying from heart attacks, and their
Exactly.
cortisol levels are super high, right? They have all this plaque buildup that you wouldn't see unless it was something that just ate like crap until they were in their 60s or 70s. You're wondering why. Well, it's because, like you said, in those high emotional states, our cortisol is just released throughout the whole body. And, because we might be out there PTing, 3, 4, 5 times a week, 6 times a week. So our belly might not be as big as somebody else's. Doesn't mean that our arteries aren't taking that hit as well
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And not only that, but in a lot of these, I mean, and it's really, really marvelous. But the thing is that because of the fact that cortisol has an anti-inflammatory effect, in your body, but it also has a deleterious, harmful effect in your body. So there you go, right? That, and of course, your blood pressure gets elevated. The adrenal gland, secretes, additional adrenaline and stuff, constricts your blood vessels, cause your blood pressure to go high, things like that. It's really an incredible connection there. And extensive stress and traumatic stress causes a decrease in your immune response. And now you're more, you're more prone to infectious disease, and all of that. And all of that comes
or
into,
just to
yeah,
recover from something as a simple cold, right? You know what I'm saying?
exactly. It's hard to recover from.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
But then, and a lot of this is happening in our veterans and first responders who experience traumatic events in their lives. And I think it's part of the entire picture, even though we're talking mental health at this point. I'm a mind body guy. I believe that, the, what do you call it? The shin bone is connected to that type of person, and
Holistic approach.
holistic system. Yeah, absolutely. That's why I love osteopathic medicine so much, osteopaths and other practitioners, that deal in that, and I believe they could be a great value to our traumatized veterans and our traumatized first responders.
100%, 100%. I mean,
I'm always saying that, and I'm trying to push it as much as possible.
yeah,
We have to take the mind body connections into account as one affects the other.
yeah. I mean, people
You
don't
know what I mean?
also even realize it, how much our gut biodome, affects
Yes.
our nervous system and our thought process, and vice versa,
Oh,
right?
well, there's a whole field now. It's called neuroimmunology.
Hmm.
Where your immune system is connected with the nervous system and the endocrine system and all of that, and you tie that into traumatic stress and PTSD. It gives you a tremendous perspective on how all these systems are connected and can cause disease and disability in our vets and our first responders as well.
Right.
So that's why we have to try to take care and encourage our vets and our first responders to really, really take care of their health and wellness out there, and encourage them to do that and learn what can be done for themselves. There's so much literature and so many videos out there, and so many sources of information that they can improve their lives, even if they're going through these very trying times that they're experiencing.
The father of modern Western medicine is often thought to be Sir William Osler, who was also one of the founders of Johns Hopkins. And
Yes.
I have his collected writings in my office, and you don't have to be an MD to understand what he's talking about. He has just endless clinical maxims that are of benefit to everybody, and the one that applies here regarding osteopathy and treating systemically and treating the whole system.
Yes.
Osler
Absolutely.
s- Osler said, "A good physician treats the symptom. A great physician treats the entire person."
Person.
Absolutely.
And that's what it needs to be. And I think we're trying to trend more to that direction today than we were. But like what I don't call it, it's called allopathic medicine, which is your conventional medicine, drugs and surgery and that type of thing. It's still very prevalent, but I'm hoping that mainstay physicians and mainstay clinicians try to integrate more of the other stuff so that we can get a better clinical outcome, and even better than that, a preventative outcome
Hmm.
to prevent these signs and symptoms. In psychiatry, orthomolecular psychiatry, which uses supplementation, things like B6 vitamin, and some of the other things like omega-3, and some of the other supplements out there, which can help to deal with depressive conditions and conditions involving traumatic stress, which can help biochemically in the brain, and a lot of that is coming up. But anyway, I would like to, and it would really be cool, to be able to give our veterans and our first responders uh, a more holistic view in future discussions
Hmm.
on your show. Which obviously deal with mental health, but also deal with the importance of maintaining physical and mental health together, and how they interact. And what it's very important, to be, I think, to be able to do that, because it's been shown many more times than ever. Even Thomas Edison said that the future of medicine, or the future of healthcare, this was back in the day, I guess. He says will be diet and things like posture, framework, human framework, which leads me to believe things like osteopathy, chiropractic, and plus nutrition, things of those nature. And he made that statement, as you know, like over 100 years ago.
Right.
And and he was a very astute observer. And then you can go as far back as Hippocrates, what he said about health and well-being, being part of diet, spirituality, plus other things as well.
Right. Talking about that, all that whole body modality. Sean, and he's watching the video right now, watching us live, asked if we have ever heard of holotropic breath work. And I have heard of it. I didn't know what it was though. So I've never heard of holotropic breath work. I've heard of the what it is, which is a therapeutic practice that uses rapid, controlled breathing and evocative music to induce altered states of consciousness. So with that being said, because our show and hopefully we get Frank back on, maybe
Oh
not.
dear.
It looks like it's just you and I now, Doc. We'll wrap it up. But with our show, Doc, we always put the disclaimer that although you are a board certified psychoanalyst and psychologist, you're not here to give out any try to treatment, any diagnosis, any plans, or anything like that. So for our audience members, if you are a professional in a field that helps with mental health and you want to come on board and talk about the different modalities like holotropic breath work, yoga, meditation, whatever it is that you might do to help the community, because we don't just limit ourselves to veterans and first responders, although that is our main population group. uh, Mental health affects all of us, doesn't matter what profession you're in. So if there is something that you do professionally that helps out in the mental health world, we highly, highly encourage you to come on to Two Docs and a Grunt, and let's have a conversation about the great work that is being put out there that maybe somebody hasn't heard of. Like I said, even I, somebody that is studying psychology right now, and hopefully will one day be able to call myself a doctor like Doc Barry is able to. um, I still never even heard of this type of breath work. So yeah, please, if you're a mental health provider, or not even a mental health provider, but if you're a work in the capacity where you help other people out with different modalities, please come on and share with us what it is that you do, and and how you see it being helpful for the community.
Mhm. Sounds good to me. Well, because of technical issues, Nate has not been able to be on live with us, but he's
Correct.
been in the studio audience. And it looks like we lost Frank as well. If not technical issues, then perhaps the battery in his phone died. And
Mm,
I would say we are close enough to the end. Pack it in. For those who have joined us this evening, uh, our viewers keep us going. The Despite technology not working and playing well with us this evening, I the discussion with Frank, like last time, was just extraordinary.
mhm.
Looking forward to getting him back on again when technology is behaving a little better. Thanks for joining us all, and like, share, subscribe, spread the wealth, spread the gospel. Thanks for joining us all.
Yes, thank you all for joining us. Y'all have a very great evening. As well, I got the feedback on some of the technical issues some of y'all are getting as well, especially those that are using Bluetooth technology to try to listen to us. And I will pass that all up to Riverside, so that way, hopefully, we can get this all resolved and not run into further issues. But thank you so much for watching our episode tonight, and we hope to see you again. And hey, look, just before we got off, Nate.
Well, let's see if it kicks me again.
Okay, while
Oh,
Frank's in the waiting room, let's get him in here.
I got him in
Yeah,
here.
Hey,
there
it's
he
me
is.
again.
Hey, we were just signing
Yeah,
off.
I know,
Everybody.
right? It's like I disappeared into the ether. But
Well,
anyway, listen, I'm sorry, I ran out of
last
juice. I had to plug it in again.
No worries.
But
Any last words, Frank? Then before we actually sign off.
No, I just hope that there are people listening to us to the point where that they feel that we're going to be very helpful to them in this discussion. I'm wishing everybody a blessed Memorial Day weekend and Memorial Day, which is a day of remembrance. And everybody that's listening to us, this weekend is not about the barbecues, although a lot of the guys I know would like to have a barbecue and beer that are no longer with us. But let's remember that we can do that. That's fine. But we also need to remember to remember our fallen.
Amen.
And to say a prayer for them and their families.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's no reason for anyone, especially that served in the uniform and lost somebody that, a buddy or even a family member, right?
Yeah.
You should not feel guilty about sitting down and having friends over and, like Frank said, having a barbecue or whatever it is. All we ask is that you just take a little moment and remember all of those that gave their all so that we
Definitely.
can have tomorrows.
And, if you're going to be drinking out there, be careful.
Yes.
Guys, our veterans and first responders too, you're taking it easy. Just, watch it on the alcohol and stuff like that, but enjoy yourselves anyway. But, try to minimize instead of maximize.
Yeah.
I always thought that philosophy helped me anyway. But hey, listen, guys, it was a joy, a pleasure as always. Sorry about the glitches and all.
Happens.
I'm definitely not a technological wizard. I can tell you that. So, you guys have a blessed weekend. All right. Thank you for your service, Doc. Thank you for what you do. And Nate is not with us, I guess, right? He's off.
No, he got back on.
I'm back.
He's off. Oh, you're still there? Okay. Okay. I just don't see your picture, brother.
That's right.
We wanted to see you. We wanted to see your handsome face, man.
Yeah.
All
That's
right.
a good one.
All right, you guys. Take
All right,
care.
all right.
God bless. Peace out.
All right,
Bye.
thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Okay.